And so let me welcome you, friends. Stephen Fetter here from the General Counsel Office, and it's a pleasure to welcome you again. Just as we gathered, we've been talking about climate change and the unseasonable weather that so many of us are having, and it's a reminder again of the impact that this climate change has on all of us and even on our food supply. We're talking about the impact on the farmers as we've gathered here. So again, welcome. We're glad you're here. I am going to invite us to gather. As we do, I'm going to bring up my candle. And as I light the candle here today, I'd like us to reflect on the climate around us, the changes that we're noticing, whether it's the unseasonably warm weather in the eastern half of the country or the mountains of snow that the prairies are getting, or however else this has an impact on your life. Think about the world we live in, and what we're noticing and what we're changing, and where we need God's presence in the middle of that. I'll light my candle, and if you have one, I invite you to light yours too. As a reminder that we gather not simply as concerned citizens, but as God's people, remembering our history, remembering our calling, remembering the presence of God who brings beauty and resilience into our midst. I live in the town of Aurora, and that's where I'm joining you from today. The Anishinaabe lands that I live and work on are traditional and treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgiana Island, and many other nations whose presence here continues to this day too. Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas and the Chippewas, recognized through Treaty 13, as well as the Williams Treaties of 1923. Only one of many of the different treaties and unceded territories on which we're all seated today. So ponder the land that nurtures you. Remember those who have nurtured it long before your ancestors came to the land where you're sitting right now. And welcome. We're glad you're here. Invited you last week to just take a moment to reflect, take a moment each day to do that focused breath prayer that James Ravenscroft was inviting us to do.
Did you do that, Aaron?
I'm going to mute mics here. Somebody's pointing out to me we're getting some extra sounds. So we invited you to do a focused breath prayer each day through the week. You remember the breathing and the ways that James talked about the breath of God that starts in the mouth and flows out to the world and changes us within us. As you did that, what did you notice? What did you change? Let's just reflect on that experience for a few minutes. Felt my heart beat slow, says Beryl. I heard the spring songs of the birds, said Heather. I set the timer for 10 minutes, but I felt my mind wandered a lot. I realized how seldom I slow down for that long. Felt at peace with myself, says Mary. Calming, less anxious, more relaxed, able to notice little things in nature around me, buds on the tree near me, warmth of sun on my face, cool breeze behind me. Unexpected but appreciated naps. Yes. I felt at peace and in total relaxation. Difficult to focus for any length of time. I realized for me how much I live in anxiety and frenzy and how hard it is just to kind of slow down and focus. Something that needs practice. Sure does. Thank you. How does it change your sense of connection to the world and nature and God when we do this? Part of why I asked the question is it's interesting to see nobody's made the connection yet between the breath prayer that we did and the climate change that we're trying to address in this study. So, what's the connection for you, and what connections emerged as you did this kind of breathing prayer this week? Felt more connected. I'm sorry, I feel more connected, especially when I'm able to do this out in nature. Our breath is transforming energy, altruistic gift of the forests and oceans. Interesting. Thank you, Robin. Brings to mind how circular everything is. We breathe, the trees breathe, we cry, the heavens rain, we laugh, the wind whispers. We are in everything and everything is in us. It's interesting to see that the earth continues to move quite well without me as I take a pause. And I'm refreshed by this lifting of the burdens I carry for a time thinking that I can fix everything, says Heather. Gardening provides time and space for this sort of connection as well. There's a program, Heart Math, says Mary, which demonstrates your heart does slow with a few deep, relaxed breaths. Regular meditation connects you to the divine within. It has numerous benefits, not the least of which is connecting with yourself and with God. You're more centered and grounded in the now. I guess breathing in the air for me connects me, or it takes me out of that sense of dominion as domination that we were talking about last week. Participation with creation rather than permission to exploit it. When I realize the connectedness between me and the rest of the world. Thank you, friends. Powerful practice, isn't it? Wonder if there's someone who would like to read our scripture reading today. Put your hand up or open your mic if you'd like to do that.
I can read it.
Okay, thank you.
Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And when the Lord smelt the pleasing odor, the Lord said in their heart, I will never again curse the ground because of humankind, for the inclination of the human heart is evil from youth. Nor will I ever again destroy every living creature as I have done. As long as the earth endures, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease.
Thank you. So Walter Brueggemann calls that the turning point in the story of Noah. When God finally realizes that the flood hasn't changed human beings, that we are still as evil as we were before the flood, and God needs a different strategy to bring grace to the world. I love that interpretation of it. What, as you think about the climate change that we are trying to address in this series, how is the destruction of the earth in the story of Noah similar to and different from the destruction that we face with climate change? The destruction in the Noah story is seen as coming from God. We know that climate change is entirely human made. Nancy finds the phrase, as long as earth endures, intriguing. Other thoughts? Are we separate from God so that we can say human made versus God made? Interesting question. God promises to never let destruction occur again, but we seem to have been playing God over the eons. Wonder if part of the difference is the difference between punishment and consequence. I think the destruction of the earth in the Noah story was intended to be punishment. But climate change is simply a consequence of our behavior. Robin says from a panentheistic theology, God is both acting apart from and through us. Maybe we're punishing ourselves, says Beryl. Marie Paul says, it seemed like there was only one challenge for them, a flood. Climate change is coming at us on all fronts: floods, fires, droughts, extreme temperatures, extreme storms. One of the themes in this week's reading is about the resilience of nature. What does this Noah story say to us about resilience? Heather says, we're told we're destroying parts of the earth and the scars will remain. Jesus too carries the scars of the follies of humans. Well, thanks, friends. When I first read the reflection from this week, I assumed that the author was a middle-aged farmer. There's a couple of phrases in the passage which made me think that's was his background, and I was fascinated and intrigued to find out that that wasn't true. And in fact, the author was one of our climate motivators, a young man in his early 20s. So that put a different spin on the whole reflection for me, and I thought it was interesting. He's also a fairly recent immigrant to Canada. His experience of his family farming was not here in Canada, but at his grandparents' farm in Burundi, which also puts an important and valuable perspective onto it for me as I listen to him. So I'm delighted to share these recordings with you. I need to say that I found his accent hard to understand, and you may too. So I have subtitled these, and with apologies to Jackson, who I know was speaking as clearly as he could, and to my old ears that don't always hear accents as clearly as they might. I hope that's helpful for you. The other problem we ran into is that Jackson's internet wasn't strong, and there were a couple of places where the internet stuttered and stammered the way it does. I've cut most of those out in the recordings, but I have subtitled it so that you can catch a drift of the flow, even if the internet isn't clear. So with that little bit of explanation, let's begin and listen to Jackson read his piece called Fields of Wheat.
As a child, I would often visit my grandparents' farm during harvest season. The fields stretched as far as the eye could see, adorning with golden wheat swirling in a gentle breeze. It was magnificent sight to behold. Thus, I also learned that those fields, although abundant, require hard work and dedication. The farmer would rise before the sun, ready to sow and reap, bearing the elements and uncertainties. Yet, year after year, the land would yield bounty and remind me of the resilience and generosity of nature. He made me ponder the nature of abundance and its connection to our effort. Is there a reason to hope when we face with challenges? Can we truly embrace new beginning amid the uncertainties of life? Decades later, as I stand in a same field of wheat, now growing my own hands, I'm reminded of the fragility and strength of life. Like the wheat that stand tall, we too are vulnerable, subject to hardship and setbacks. But just as the land recovers and flourishes after the harvest, so can we find renewal and abundance to our own lives. Nature has taught me much about the dedication, balance between fragility and resilience. It's beckoned us to believe in power of renew. May we have the wisdom to listen. May we cultivate the seed of hope and watch them grow. May we witness the miracle of abundance in our lives.
I love that smile at the end. He was so clearly glad to be finished. I think reading aloud is not something he's very accustomed to doing. What did you notice? Choose a word or phrase that spoke to you in this reflection. Generosity of nature. Thanks, Robin. Miracle of abundance. Gratitude. Power of renewal. Pondering the nature of abundance and its connection to our efforts. He has a feel for the land, says Bob. And there's that balance between fragility and resilience, says Heather. Sure. So tell us a story in a sentence or maybe two, but no more than that. How have you experienced resilience and generosity in nature? Clearly, this is a very personal story for him. He's talking about where he noticed it. Where is it? Where has it been for you? Every time I set my table, says Carol. Recovery of our lands from fire, seeing new green growth in the charred remains of our forests. Or the diversity in ecology, plants, animals quickly multiply if left what to do. Nature soon overtakes human endeavors when given the chance. And then trees and plants affected by drought, appearing to be dead, they come back next year. Or a pine cone from a felled tree, which, as I nurtured it over the next year, began to grow into a new tree. New dawn, world recreated every day, fresh starts. After a cold, harsh winter, the welcome return of warm days speaks resilience of nature we anticipate with hope. When the spring flowers bloom in spite of a severe winter. I was out walking in the forest yesterday and just saw the beginnings of a few green sprouts coming up. It's so heartening. And there are daffodils in my garden that are 2 inches high. We had a huge ash tree, says Heather, that was dying with the ash borer beetle. The arborist cut it down but left the stump and the new growth around the trunk. It's healthy, bug-free. It's a flaming bush of hope. Jim says he's more than a middle-aged farmer, but the harvest every year tells of God's production. Marg says, I'm the daughter of generations of farmers. I was myself a farmer. I've seen the renewal and resiliency constantly. I was really struck in this piece that Jackson was talking really about food, right? Talking about our food supply. It's a subset of our concern for the climate, and an important subset. He's not talking in this piece about everything that is going wrong in all of the world. He's talking about the impact that it has on our ability to feed ourselves. Listen, as I will share a little bit of what of our conversation, and this time you'll actually see his face as well as the top of his head.
I usually go with my grandparents to see how they do farming, especially my mom and grandma. But usually, I was afraid of I was afraid to touch the soil. But when I start going and I start doing the farming myself. And when my grandma said, "Oh, I just give you this farmland, you have to go your own thing, and I want to see the result." And when I started, I found very enjoyable. And when they grow, I thought, maybe this is magical because how things grow, you just have a seed, but you found out you have many. For example, Grandpa gave me like of 5 cones, and then he told me, make sure you take out those seed on this corn, and I want to see the result what you make. And when I went to harvest it, I got hundreds of the corn when I just got 5 of them. And that's how I start liking climate change. And even right now, last summer, we did go to farm here. There's a land in War which you can go and pay for and rent for the season
Mhm.
and then farm for it, which is very, very good.
So are you doing that now? Did you farm last summer?
I did.
What did you grow?
We did grow peanuts, corns, beans, and cabbage, and also potatoes.
Tell me how that connects to your sense of the importance of the climate.
That connects me to climate thing we live through because when I do farming, it reminds me how the beauty of nature surround us, give us food instead of wasting the land of building a lot of houses and left for farming. It gives us the beauty and food we can have and share to our friend and people you love and people you care about. So that's connected to our climate change. And sometimes I imagine if there is no land, we have no food. And sometimes those land they connect us in some kind of different kind of magic, which I cannot explain.
So let me pause it there. Again, word or phrase, what jumped out at you? What did you notice in that, or what spoke to you in his thoughts? His word magic, his excitement. Yeah, I love that lovely sense of wonder, wasn't it? Charming, his passion. Absolutely. It's a kind of magic you can't explain. The land connects us in a deeper magic. And yeah, the idea that he was afraid of touching the soil, isn't that interesting? If we have no land, we have no food, and we have no magic, says Laurie. His concern on the destruction of nature, says Ronnie. The expectation that he would produce what he needed from the ears of corn, says Nancy. How insightful of his grandparents to give him 5 ears of corn and say, go and plant these, see what happens. So talk about magic and wonder as sort of metaphors for all of life and not just for the garden or for the farmer's field. Bob, I'm not sure how he came to Canada. He's a part of the Lenten project because he was one of our climate motivators. He was an active member of his youth and young adults group in his home church and recommended to us for the program that Lori and others helped to lead with young people, as they were invited both to reflect on their own connection to nature and also to sort of amplify their voices. Lori told us a little bit about the program in our first session, and one of the things they did was go and talk to a bunch of politicians about that. I didn't ask him when he came to Canada, to be honest, so I can't tell you more than that, I'm afraid. There is this wonderful connection between beauty and food and community and his joy at each step, says Alice. Jackson grew like his corn, from scared of soil to joyful and amazed at abundance. Thank you, Lori. Oh, thank you, Ronnie. Nice to know you're from the same country. That's cool. Beryl says, when we lose magic, a small part of our innocence goes with it. So talk about climate change and our food supply. I thought this was really important and insightful for Jackson to talk about that. He was invited to talk about climate change, and he ends up talking about not all of nature, but farming and the danger to us when our activity damages our ability to raise our own food. So how do we make that connection more explicitly in our advocacy, in our teaching of our children, in all the ways that we talk about climate change? It was the grandma who sparked Jackson's wonder. It sure was. What can you do with the children or young adults in your life that would spark wonder like that? Carol says climate change eventually results in prices rising, poverty levels go up, and for me, child poverty becomes an even bigger concern. Laurie says, what really upsets me is how many people around the world live just on $1 a day, and many subsist because of very small scale farming. And now that already small source of sustenance can't be counted on. Climate change and land development both are threats to our food security. We've paved over so many acres of good farmland, we're seeing a drought threatening the breadbasket of the country right now. Jackson goes on to talk about that. Let me share with you a little more of our conversation. There it is.
And last year we did do like a crime motivator.
Mm-hmm.
We did go. I even got to see the view of how nature are. If you go to the forest and see how the beautiful and the sound are, you would ask yourself why they are destroying the trees. And if you look far to the future, and if there's no trees, actually our life will suffer.
I was really struck in your piece by the way you talked about resilience and how you saw resilience in the things you were growing. Do you want to say a little more about what you meant in that?
Uh, resilience and those fragility, when you plant seeds, you're not expecting any result, because everything it depends of the change of the element. Some people try to do farming, but in the end, the weather ruined everything, and you just don't get a result. And people say, maybe this is a waste of time. But in my view, the failure is not the end. I think it's the beginning.
Hmm.
Is and if you don't have the resilience and the energy to continue everything and keep going, it doesn't give you any result. But if you say, today I failed and I'm gonna try again and try again and try again, I say resilience is a part of ourselves, because if you imagine how people work every day, many people fail, many people success. For example, you work, you start planting seed, and then it happens to be raining, snow all day, and everything you plant, they don't grow. And you say, ah, farming is not my thing. Maybe I should give up.
Hmm.
And that's not the option. Farming is the foundation. If a person don't fail in life, he will feel confident. So when he reach the top, you can fail once, twice, third, fourth, and fifth. You can leap and leap the thing you saw in the beginning, because the foundation you have is stronger than the one you start with.
Hmm.
Even in the future, if there's some kind of trouble, you'll keep trying. But let's say, oh, I start today, I failed, I'll say, try again when you're in a hopeless situation. If you're in a hopeless situation, that's when you found your strength. That's where your strength lie. But if you give up of what you're doing, everything will crumble.
I have the sense that the climate motivators program really was about planting seeds. It's interesting to see where they grew in him. So he's talking about nature's capacity to regenerate. How does that create hope for you, and how does it create anxiety for you? Always takes a while to get stuff onto the chat. I'm thinking of the Gaia theory, says Robin, the idea that the earth is at work on a systems level to repair itself. Hope that in nature we can find a way to bounce back, that nature can find a way to bounce back. Anxiety that nature's resilience might make people more complacent about decreasing their carbon footprint. I'm older, says Diane. I've enjoyed my life without the anxiety over climate change. I feel for the younger ones. At least, its ability to regenerate, such as after a fire, gives me hope that at least some of nature will survive, except for the species going extinct. When people fail, says Marie, and feel battered and depressed, they find it hard to try again. They see no strength to try again. I'm impressed with a farmer's resilience, and out of need, you have to try again. Energized by success and connections, but as I get older, I'm increasingly more anxious about the energy required, says Nancy. Creates hope in that God loves that which God created and God will restore and sustain it. However, I'm anxious that our determination to dominate everything is growing greater than God. Jim says the pandemic showed us how the earth is trying to heal. Once the air traffic stopped, the air cleaned up quickly. Our failure at caring for the bees through wildflower discussion, loss of habitat has brought a movement to bring bees into cities, place hives on top of buildings. Our failure need not be our end. We can look for a new beginning. Well, God is ultimately in control. I think you already responded to that question. Let me just move on to the next and last little bit of this conversation. So I want to save time, if I can, for you to do a little bit of talk in small groups together. So tell me about the Climate Motivators program that you were on. What was the most important thing you learned in that program?
Something I learned there, very special, is that every everyone's view are different to why you have yours. And when everyone's view are different, you get something new and connect those different views to create something stronger and stronger belief. For example, people will believe maybe many people they don't have the power to change people's mind. But when we put our hands together and connect together and put their idea together, they can make a change. When we visit the farmer on Vancouver Island, there was different areas and different places. Some places were dead, some places were still alive. He got to show us how you get to take care of the environment. He get to show us how the thing he used, he doesn't throw them away. He just go back to the soil and use them for things he will use in the future. For example, how he take care of his chickens. They are both in the same place, but he he used those things to make his farm grow. So I learned that even for me, if there is kind of a obstacle there in front, I should try to make difference no matter what obstacle is there.
What's the most important thing in that essay that you wrote that you want people to take away with them?
The the resilience you have and strong belief you have is what takes you forward. That's that's the sentence maybe I'll pass to them because when you continue in your journey, don't give up.
Resilience you have, the strong belief you have is what will take you forward. Don't give up. So we have about 7 minutes to go into small groups and reflect on what we've been talking about. My suggested questions to you for your small group are the ones in smaller type there on the screen. Jackson talks about the value of doing this work in community, on how he realized that everybody he was working with on that Climate Motivators program came with different perspectives, and that together they were stronger because of that. So reflect on the ways in which you have connected with people in your community around these issues. What have you learned about the value of working in community on topics like this? And what are you doing in community now, this week, this year, to nurture and embrace the abundance that surrounds you wherever you are? I've created small groups of either 3 or 4. We'll take 7 minutes, and up in the top right corner, that one, there's a countdown clock so you can see how it's going. Please make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak, because I don't think we'll have a chance to take up these questions afterwards. We're running quick on time here. So reflect on that, the value of community as we move forward and nurture and embrace the abundance around us. Let's go. Well, welcome back, folks. It's never enough time, is it? We only have a few minutes left in our time together, but if while we just go through the last few things here, if you would like to just share a learning from your small group in a word or a sentence, add it to the chat as we talk. Wanted to invite my colleague Lori to come up and speak to a couple of slides that she has asked me to share with you. And while she finds her microphone, just let me remind you of this one that we shared with you last week, but it's current. This afternoon, in another hour and a half, we're reconvening again on Zoom for a special edition of the Mods Book Squad. This is a United Learning webinar series that has been going about once a month since September, and will continue for as long as our current moderator is serving out her term, right through to 2025. This week, we're looking at the Act Fast book, which of course is the one that we're all studying together. So I commend it to you, 3:30 to 5 this afternoon at Eastern Time. And I'm just going to put a link in the in the chat there in case you haven't already signed up for it. I invite you to go and have a look at that, and it would be lovely to see you here at on Zoom again in an hour and a half. Lori, over to you. There were a couple of other slides here that you wanted to share with us today.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Lori Neal, and I am one of the leads on climate at the General Counsel Office. So it's great to be with you today. And just wanted to highlight 2 things. One is that we have a specific Concern for Climate Justice e-newsletter. Perhaps you already are on it, and that may have been how you heard about this Lenten study. But please join if you're not on it and would like to receive information about ongoing climate efforts. And the second slide is probably something many of you are already familiar with, but the Faithful Footprints program, which Christine Boyle, who's going to be interviewed as part of the session at 3:30, helped initiate, is a program of the church to support your communities of faith to green your building. So each community of faith is funding is available to you only once, but if your community of faith hasn't yet accessed it, then you may want to look into it and can receive up to $30,000 in grants. And during Earth Week, April 21st to 28th, we're inviting communities of faith who have access, Faithful Footprints, to organize a retrofit tour and open your doors to show others what you've done. So that you may want to look into that as well. Yeah, I see Virginia, was it, that just said that they just completed their project, and there's lots of information on the Faithful Footprints newsletter and webpage with stories of work that's being done. So thank you, Stephen, for the chance to share just those two pieces of information. And for those who are able, I'll see you at 3:30.
And thank you, Lori. The Faithful Footprints program has been a terrific boon for the congregation I lead too. We got a grant to put a whole bunch of insulation into the ceiling of our sanctuary that had none at all, and our gas consumption has gone down by 23% since our bench line before we did it. So I don't know if we could have done it without the grant from Faithful Footprints, and we're just so grateful for that. So if you wanted to watch the Mod Squad, you can follow that that link and sign up for the program. If you want to, if you're not able to come today but you want to watch it later, here's a link to our United in Learning playlist where we collect all of our public recordings for programs, and the Mod Squad recording will be posted there fairly soon. It usually takes me a couple of days just to get things organized because it always takes a little bit of doing. Just in case you're interested, hang on here. Come on, computer, you can do it. This is the United in Learning catalog at ChurchX. And here's a link to our YouTube channel recordings playlist. So you can always find the recordings from any of our programs there at ChurchX, and by all means, have a look at any of the ones you need to see. Okay, coming back to this page. Part of our study, of course, is that we want to carry on with the reflection over the following week. So we hope that our hour together today has sparked some thought in you, and some conviction in you, and some resilience in you. I now invite you to spend the next week reflecting on what we've done together. The practice on page 53 from Jackson's reflection is to practice gratitude and sharing. Take a moment. We might even try more than one, maybe even one a day. Take a moment to appreciate the abundance around you. Offer a helping hand. Share your resources with someone in need. Remember that in giving, we receive. And in sharing, we cultivate abundance. Once again, I invite you to do that over the next week. And then we'll begin our session next week with some stories about what we noticed and what changed when we did that. But for now, we've come to the end of our hour. So let me close with this prayer from Jackson's reflection. Let us pray. The vast fields of wheat that feed us are a gift from the earth. The earth, fragile yet boundless, nurtured, and it nurtures us. Sometimes taken for granted, often underappreciated. It's time to recognize its true essence. Guide us, divine, to see the beauty of this world you have bestowed upon us. Empower us to cultivate abundance in our lives and to share it with others. Lead us on a path of gratitude and generosity. Amen. Thank you, friends. Good to be with you. Look forward to seeing you maybe today in an hour and a half, and otherwise next week. Bye for now.